So this is how the ventral aspect of the medulla or the brainstem, which we can see. So uppermost is the midbrain, middle one is the pons, and lower part is the medulla. So same as spinal cord, this medulla is also divided by some fissures into right and left halves. So anterior median fissure and posterior median sulcus. Then these right and left halves again divided by anterolateral and posterolateral sulcus into different regions. So on either side of the anterior median sulcus, there are two longitudinal elevation called as a pyramids. In the lower part of pyramid, there we can see some blurred margins because of the decussation of pyramidal tracts. On either side of the anterolateral sulcus, we can see again an elevation called as a olive, which is because of the inferior olivary nucleus. Through anterolateral sulcus, one nerve emerges called as a hypoglossal nerve. Then this is the dorsal view of the medulla. So upper part of the medulla, which is below this white line, these are called as a stria medullaris, is the actually open part, which is forming the floor of fourth ventricle. When we will see fourth ventricle, that part we will revise in detail. And the lower part of medulla, which is a closed part, which contains the central canal through which CSF passes. So this is the posterior median sulcus. On either side in the upper part, we have a Gratial tubercle, then cuneate tubercle, then tuberculum cinereum. And more laterally, there is an inferior cerebellar peduncle, which continues upwards and then goes into the cerebellum. So this is the general features which we can see on the external aspect. Now, the second section. So first section was at the level of pyramidal decussation, where we were able to see the pyramidal tracts, which is crossing over in the lateral column. So it is going to form lateral corticospinal tract. Now we are moving a bit upwards. So now there are some features still similar to spinal cord, but now it is going to differentiate a bit. So what is the first we will see what is the white matter and what is the gray matter. So this section is called as at the sensory decussation. So that means pyramidal tract was a motor tract and that was called as a motor decussation. Now here the sensory fibers are going to decussate. So this is called as a section of the medulla at sensory decussation. Okay. So in the white matter, what we are able to see. So posterior column tracts are also called as a dorsal column tracts. They contain two major tracts. One is called as a fasciculus gracialis. Second is called as a fasciculus cuneatus. This tract you have learned in spinal cord. Every tract has three types of neurons. So primary, secondary and tertiary. So for the sensory tract, the primary neurons, they end in their own nucleus. From there, secondary order neurons start. They go up to thalamus. And from thalamus, tertiary order neurons start and they go into the cerebrum. So this is the first tract called as nucleus gracialis and cuneatus. So these tracts, they end in nucleus gracialis and cuneatus. So from here, secondary order neurons starts. Now these neurons, they go on the lateral side of the central gray matter, which you are able to see in the diagram, and they decussate in the center to the opposite side. So now these fibers which are decussating, this is called as internal arcuate fibers. So they are going from nucleus gracialis, nucleus cuneatus, and going to decussate to the opposite side. And now these fibers are called as internal arcuate fibers. After decussation, a tract is formed again. Now this tract is called as a medial lemniscus. So if someone asks you what is medial lemniscus, it is formed by the decussation of fibers of fasciculus cuneatus and fasciculus gracialis. Okay, so this is just continuation of this tract after decussation. Okay, now secondly, we are able to see this pink color oval structure that is called as a medial longitudinal bundle. It is again a white matter. So these are the white matter. Third is pyramids. Now you have to remember, upper part of the pyramid, we were able to differentiate two pyramids because of the anterior median fissure. Well, in the lower part of the medulla, there is a blurring of line because of the decussation. That means in the lower medulla, there is a decussation. and in upper part of medulla there is no decussation. So that means pyramidal tract before decussation. You have to remember, from cerebrum, whenever the fibers come, they are going to cross. So pyramidal tract in the upper medulla is before decussation. That means it is ipsilateral corticospinal fibers. So this is the, if this is the part of the pyramid, this is of the same side of the pyramidal tract, while this will be of the again same side of the tract. Okay. So in the lower part of medulla, they are going to cross. So we can see the pyramids in the ventral part, which is a white matter. Above that will be the medial lemniscus, which is formed by the crossed fibers of the tract gracialis and fasciculus cuneatus. Then above that, we are able to see the medial longitudinal bundle. Above that, there is a central canal, which is surrounded by the central gray matter. So here you can see central gray matter is very small. The remaining part here and remaining gray matter is this is inferior olivine nucleus. Whichever tracks which are followed through the spinal cord will also continue in the medulla, and the remaining part is filled by the nerve fibers with poorly defined nuclei. That is called as a reticular formation. Okay, so white matter consists of the different part is pyramid, medial lemniscus, medial longitudinal bundle, and internal arcuate fibers. Okay, now let's see in little bit detail. So I told you that first order neurons synapse in respective nuclei. From there, secondary order neurons start, that is internal arcuate fibers. They go between the central gray matter and the spinal nucleus, and now they decussate in the midline to form the median lemniscus. The sensory tract secondary order neuron, they goes to thalamus. So after decussation is between the central gray matter and the pyramids. Now how is this arrangement? So you have to remember the nucleus gracialis, that is more in the ventral and medial side. While the nucleus cuneatus fibers in the medial lemniscus, they are more of dorsal and lateral in position. So this part is important. If there is an injury of the medial lemniscus, if it is only in the ventral part, that means only gracialis will injure. If the medial lemniscus in the dorsal part is injured, then only cuneatus will injure. And medial longitudinal bundle, how it is formed. So this bundle is medial to medial lemniscus. It interconnects, as it is a white fiber tract, it interconnects number of nuclei. So third cranial nerve nucleus, fourth cranial nerve nucleus, sixth cranial nerve nucleus, then eighth cranial nerve nucleus, and spinal nucleus of accessory nerve. So it connects these many nuclei. What is the importance of this tract? As you can see, third, fourth, and sixth, all three nerves supplies the muscles of or the extraocular muscles. The eighth nerve, this is sensory nerve, which is coming from the, or which is the nerve of hearing. And last is spinal nucleus of accessory nerve, so it supplies the muscles of neck, trapezius and sternocleidomastoid. Okay. So these tracts helps whenever there is something strange or something sudden is happening on your lateral side. So your eyes move to that sound. So sound is heard by the eighth nerve, and for that you move also your neck to that sound. So if something sudden sound happens on your posterior or lateral side, you immediately move almost involuntarily your eyes towards that sound. So along with your neck. So this is the function of this medial longitudinal bundle. Okay. Then gray matter. So that was the white matter. So in the gray matter, we have the nucleus cuneatus and the nucleus gracialis, as well as lateral to cuneate nucleus. There is an accessory cuneate nucleus, as it contains the fibers which is coming just from the upper limb. So upper limb के proprioceptive unconscious fibers, they are going to this accessory cuneate nucleus. So after coming to accessory cuneate nucleus, some fibers are given, जैसे हमने internal arcuate fibers we have seen. It gives posterior external arcuate fibers. So at forming a different tract in the diagram, we are able to see this is the accessory cuneate nucleus. From here, posterior external arcuate fibers, they are also called as a cuneo-cerebellar fibers. They ascend upwards and they go through inferior cerebellar peduncle to the cerebellum. Okay, so that is cuneo-cerebellar tract. Next, we can see the nucleus of spinal tract of trigeminal nerve and the spinal tract also. Also, we can see the central gray matter here, in which we are able to see three nuclei. One is hypoglossal nucleus, which is most medial and ventral. Posterolateral to that, we are able to see dorsal nucleus of vagus. Again, posterolateral to that, we are able to see nucleus tractus solitarius. So there are three nuclei: hypoglossal, vagal, and tractus solitarius. So we'll see one by one. Are you able to follow up to this one, or should we revise first?
Once.
Is it okay? Should we go up?
Revise once.
So nucleus tractus solitarius, as you remember in the facial nerve, I told you that chorda tympani is the carrying the taste sensation from anterior two-third of the tongue. It carries this sensation towards a nucleus called as a nucleus tractus solitarius. So it receives not only from chorda tympani, it also receives from ninth nerve, which is glossopharyngeal nerve, 10th nerve, which is vagal cranial nerve. So it receives gustatory information from lingual and palatal mucosa. So ninth nerve supplies the soft palate. So taste sensation from the ninth nerve and 10th nerve also. And as usual, sensory information is carried to the thalamus, from thalamus to cerebral cortex. So nucleus tractus solitarius receives taste sensation and then it goes to thalamus, thalamus to cerebral cortex. So importance or the function of this nucleus is also involved in swallowing and gag reflex. So ninth nerve, which is supplying oropharynx and soft palate, which is a sensory nerve to this part. If something large or foreign body is at the level of oropharynx, then it stimulates this ninth nerve. Through this ninth nerve, information is relayed into the nucleus tractus solitarius. From nucleus tractus solitarius relays this information to nucleus ambiguus, which is a motor nucleus, which contains the neurons which innervate the muscles of palate, pharynx, and larynx. Imagine something foreign body is present in your posterior part of the mouth. So what will happen? The body will try to close down all the openings through which this foreign body can go. So it closes down the larynx, it closes down the nasopharynx, and it opens wide the esophagus, so that this foreign body can be pushed towards the esophagus. It has to protect the lungs and the larynx as well as nasopharynx. So for that purpose, what will happen? The swallowing reflex will happen. For that, larynx and pharynx will raised. The laryngeal opening or entrance is narrowed so that foreign body will not go into that part. The glottis is closed and there are peristaltic movements which will move or go towards the esophagus, which happens through pharyngeal plexus. So this is called as a swallowing reflex. And if it is some are very sensitive, most of the times what happens, the person tries to vomit it out. So that is called as a gag reflex. So for gag reflex, sensory nerve is glossopharyngeal nerve. So if somehow ninth nerve or ninth nerve nucleus is involved, then this gag reflex will be lost. So even if there is a foreign body or any large bolus of food which is present, it will not stimulate the gag reflex and it will try to move on its own toward the lower part. So it might go into larynx, it might injure esophagus without the peristaltic movement. So this gag reflex is actually a protective mechanism. So it should be present. Okay, I hope you understood. We'll revise again after the lecture. Now the next nucleus, which was anteromedial to the tractus solitarius, was vagal nucleus. In the diagram, you are able to see, if we see on the internal structure, this is a vagal nucleus. You are also able to see in the upper part, there is a nucleus ambiguous, which is a motor nucleus. So vagal nucleus is the largest parasympathetic nucleus. Obviously, it gives preganglionic fibers and it supplies the viscera in the chest and the abdomen. So most of the viscera is supplied by the vagal nerve. The hypoglossal nerve or hypoglossal nucleus is 2 centimeter long and it's present in the floor of fourth ventricle along with vagal nucleus, and its nerve emerges out through ventrolateral surface, which we have already seen. Now, the most important part which we are going to cover today is the inferior olivary nucleus. The shape is irregular crenated mass with its hilum directed medially. It is not a single nucleus, so it consists of 3 nuclei. One is in large inferior olivary nucleus, which is in the center, and then 2 small nuclei. One is medial to that, and one is lateral to the inferior olivary nucleus. So it is connection of these 3 centers. Then it receives the fibers from lower down. So ascending fibers will come from spino-olivary and dorsal column tracts. Obviously, they will be crossed. So from right side of the spinal cord, it goes into the left inferior olivary nucleus. So descending fibers. So it receives fibers from the higher center as well. So it is coming from cerebral cortex and thalamus, which will be ipsilateral because lower down they are going to cross. Then also from central tegmental tract and reed nucleus, which we will see in the midbrain and other structures, as well as from central gray matter of the midbrain. So the central tegmental tract is called as a fibers coming from the red nucleus and central gray matter of midbrain. Okay. So these are the descending fibers. So all information from higher center as well as from lower part of, that is spinal cord, will come to this olivary nucleus. So what will it do? It will send this information to olivocerebellar tract to the cerebellum and opposite side. So that means higher centers, tract ipsilateral, they will be crossed. So it goes into the cerebellum. So from higher center, information received. From spinal cord, information received. It mixes this information and it goes to the opposite cerebellum. So here you are able to see olivocerebellar tract. So this is the olivary nucleus. This is the central inferior olivary nucleus. From here you are able to see these red structures which are going olivocerebellar tract, which is going to the opposite cerebellum. Now it goes to the Purkinje cells of cerebellum. I hope you remember pyramidal cells which are present in cerebral cortex, from where the pyramidal tract starts. Same as that, in the cerebellum, we have some special cells which present. These special cells are called as a Purkinje cells. So there is a layer of Purkinje cell in the cerebellum. This layer contains, or this layer is a monocell layer. That means in this layer only a single line of Purkinje cell is present. Then here you are able to see this is the Purkinje cell. So in this layer only one Purkinje cell layer will be present. So the olivocerebellar fibers, they come and they join with this Purkinje cell. So relation is 1-to-1 relation. So one olivocerebellar fiber will go to one Purkinje cell only. And the fibers coming from this olivary nucleus will be called as a climbing fibers. So this information you will again revise in the cerebellum. I just want you to revise it, so you'll be able to understand more in the cerebellum. So that was the olivary nucleus. So what is its function? It receives the information and it sends this information to cerebellum to process. Okay. Next section. So that was the second section at sensory decussation. The important structure we are able to see in that sensory decussation was internal arcuate fibers. Okay. Now at the fourth ventricle. So that means we are moving towards the open part of the medulla, that is uppermost part of the medulla. So here gray matter is very much increased because there are a number of gray matter nuclei, that is cranial nerve nuclei, and we are able to see some other structures as well. So we'll see one by one again. Can you see this yellow structure which is showing the inferior cerebellar peduncle? Okay. So this section is called at the floor of fourth ventricle. The gray matter which we are able to see is the several cranial nucleus. So there is a sequence from medial to lateral. So medial most is hypoglossal nucleus. Lateral to that will be dorsal nucleus of vagus. Both are found in the floor of fourth ventricle. The nucleus of tractus solitarius and inferior medial vestibular nucleus, which is related to the eighth cranial nerve. Then also we are able to see nucleus ambiguous, cochlear nuclei, and nucleus of spinal tract of trigeminal, which was same as in the all three section. So these are the gray matter. Then inferior olivary nucleus again present. Arcuate nuclei. In the diagram you are able to see arcuate nuclei. So ventral to the pyramid, there is collection of some nuclei. So this is arc shape, so it is called as a arcuate nuclei. Now, there are visceral centers present in medulla: respiratory center, cardiac center, and vasomotor center, which we have already seen in the general information of medulla. So again, we see one by one. White matter, this was the gray matter. What is the white matter present? So in white matter, there is an inferior cerebellar peduncle, which is present on both the sides. So this is inferior cerebellar peduncle, which occupies the most posterior lateral part of the section of this medulla. Then olivocerebellar fibers. So I told you from this inferior olivary nucleus, this will be crenated shape. Okay. This is the hilum. From hilum, the fibers will go towards the opposite inferior cerebellar peduncle. So these are called as olivocerebellar fibers. Then as there are nuclei present, so vagal 10th nerve will come out, 12th nerve will come out, as well as spinal part of accessory nerve will come out. Now, the white matter, again, first is pyramid. Okay. Then there is a medial lemniscus, then tectospinal tract, and medial longitudinal fasciculus. This medial longitudinal fasciculus is continuous with ventral vestibular tract. So it ascends in pons and midbrain as well. So we'll be able to see in detail in pons. So that is called as a medial longitudinal fasciculus. Now we'll see arcuate nuclei. I told you these arcuate nuclei present in arc shape ventral to the pyramid. So these is a actually displaced pontine. So during development, they develop actually in the pons, but later they moved towards the medulla. From here, some fibers come out and they go on the anterior side. So from the ventral side, we are able to see these fibers and they go towards the inferior cerebellar peduncle. So these fibers are called as the anterior external arcuate fibers. I hope you remember all three arcuate fibers. We'll just revise in the last. I will solve your confusion then. And stria medullaris are also derived from it. I told you stria medullaris, which is separating the open part of medulla from the open part of pons. So this is actually dividing the fourth ventricle into two parts. Upper part is related to pons, lower part is part of medulla. So they project mainly again to the cerebellum, opposite in cerebellum. There is eighth nerve nuclei called as a vestibular nuclei. They are collection of 4 types of nuclei: medial, lateral, superior, and inferior. Now they receive some fibers. So this they receive from spinal cord, cerebellum, vestibular part of eighth nerve, brainstem, reticular formation. And from here, the information is sent to cerebellum, medial longitudinal fasciculus. I already told you this is related to the vestibular nuclei, and it ascends upward in the pons and midbrain. It also sends signal or the information to spinal cord and lateral lemniscus. This is vestibular nuclei. Vestibular nuclei we see detail in the pons. Then next, motor nucleus, which is called as a spatial visceral efferent component, which is related to the nucleus ambiguous. It receives bilaterally corticobulbar fibers and is connected to many brainstem centers as it is supplying palate, soft palate, then pharynx and larynx. Okay. Then, as it is related to these muscles, cuff reflex is the function of nucleus ambiguous. So, when this reflex will be activated. So, if there is some irritation of larynx or trachea, then this sensory information will be carried by the laryngeal branch of vagus, as vagus is the nerve which is supplying the viscera in the chest and abdomen. So, sensory information carried by the vagus. This is carried through to sensory nucleus of trigeminal nerve. From sensory nucleus, it is carried to the motor nucleus, that is nucleus ambiguous. This motor nucleus will affect the muscles of palate, pharynx and larynx and will cause a forceful exaltation by contraction of the intercostal and abdominal muscles. It will release this information and there will be forceful contraction. As this contraction is against the closed glottis, so the pressure will build up in the intercostal and intra-abdominal inter-chest region, and then immediately glottis will open and this cuff reflex will be through the mouth cavity. So that is the cuff reflex. Now there is one more reflex called as a sneeze reflex. So there is a nasal mucosal irritation. Now here the sensory nerve is actually ophthalmic or maxillary division of trigeminal nerve. So sensory information carried to the spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve. Again, it is carried to the motor nucleus, that is nucleus ambiguous. From ambiguous, there will be first a sharp inhalation and then there is an explosive exhalation because oropharyngeal isthmus will be closed down by the palatoglossus muscle. So whatever forceful air will be pushed, it will be pushed through the nasopharynx to nasal cavity. So it will be called as a sneeze. Okay. Now, white matter, that is inferior cerebellar peduncle. So I already told you, cerebellum is connected to the brainstem by 3 peduncles. Midbrain is connected by superior peduncle. Pons is connected by middle cerebellar peduncle and medulla is connected through inferior cerebellar peduncle. So these peduncles are like gateways. So they consist of only the white fibers. So it is divided into 2 parts. That is, one part is afferent, one part is efferent. So the afferent part is called as a restiform body. It consists of number of fibers. Some you know that is posterior spinocerebellar. 1 minute. I'm lecture खूप उशिरा चालू झालाय. आलेच नव्हतं कोणी 15 मिनिट लागले. हो कारण सुरूच झाले ना 10:30 ला. Okay. So the afferent fibers are posterior spinocerebellar. If you remember, these are also called as a cuneo-cerebellar, which are also called as a posterior external earthquake fiber, which you are able to see here. And they start from the accessory cuneate nucleus. Now, this accessory cuneate nucleus will have the information, especially the unconscious proprioceptive information from upper limb. So that is cuneo-cerebellar. Trigeminal-cerebellar from the trigeminal nucleus. Olivocerebellar from inferior olivary nucleus to the opposite inferior cerebellar peduncle. And from reticular formation, reticulocerebellar. Then the medial part is efferent part called as a juxta-restiform body. So it consists of different tracts. So again, this part will be dealt in more detail in cerebellum. Now, what is the blood supply? So, blood supply of the brain is mainly through circle of Willis. What is circle of Willis? It is a circular formation of the vessels which is formed by 2 internal carotid arteries and 2 vertebral arteries. So internal carotid arteries, they come from the anterior side, while 2 vertebral arteries, they come from the posterior side. If you remember cervical vertebra, in their transverse process, we have a foramen called as a vertebral foramen. So if you remember, it is called as a vertebral foramen through which vertebral arteries will pass. These 2 vertebral arteries will come in the cranial posterior cranial fossa and they join over the pons to form the single artery called as a basilar artery. These basilar artery and internal carotid arteries, they join together to form a circle, so called as a circle of Willis. So here you are able to see the blood supply is different for different parts of the section. So if any of the artery is gone, vessel is gone, that means only one part will be affected. Here you are able to see the dark orange color is supplied by anterior spinal artery. So if there is any injury to anterior spinal artery, the shaded portion will only be affected. The remaining portion is supplied by the different artery, so it will be normal. So this is how we correlate with the symptoms and signs to the injury level. So if we know injury level, we can identify what symptoms and signs will be showing, or vice versa. If we can understand the signs symptoms, we can understand the level of injury or which vessel is injured. So medulla, whole of the medulla, it's supplied by the branches of, first is vertebral artery, then anterior posterior spinal arteries, which actually supply the spinal cord, and they continue upward through foramen magnum, so they will supply the lower medulla. Then posterior inferior cerebellar artery. If you remember the brainstem, on the dorsal aspect of the brainstem there is a fourth ventricle, and on the over the fourth ventricle there lies the cerebellum. So obviously the blood supply will be shared, and I have just told you that over the pons, two vertebral arteries will join to form a single basilar artery. So these are the vessels which are going to supply the medulla. So should we revise first? Any part you didn't understood?
Ma'am, revise once.
No, any part you didn't understood, so should we revise that part and again we'll revise in total?
Ma'am, can we revise it before the next lecture? Like, if you have a lecture tomorrow, we can revise it before it starts.
No, I didn't understand. Which part you want to revise?
Ma'am, no such difficulty, but like every time you take the whole revision, so can we do it before you start a new lecture tomorrow?
Yeah. So you want to again revise first part of medulla?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So in general, the brainstem is the most important. Obviously, whole brain is important, but after spinal cord, brainstem is more important. So you have to understand first the functions of the medulla. It consists of, first, it is a flow between the spinal cord and the higher centers. So whatever tracts which are present in spinal cord, they will be present in medulla. So if you understood the tracts, you'll be able to understand what structures are passing through medulla. Secondly, it consists of centers. First is for reflex center, that is sneezing, yawning, coughing, and swallowing and gag reflex. Secondly, its centers consist of visceral centers, which are controlling the heart rate, respiration, blood pressure, consciousness, everything. So whatever centers present, they are very vital for life. So any small injury might cause coma or death, or even major hampering with the basic life function. So whatever internal structure present, you have to understood what is function and how it is going to function. So it has to receive signals from somewhere, it has to send the information to somewhere. So if whenever you say one nucleus, you have to understand the sensory information is coming from where, it is sending again this information to where. So this is the dorsal aspect of the medulla. Upper part is open and lower part is closed. In the upper open part, it is forming the floor of the fourth ventricle, which we will learn in the fourth ventricle. The lower part, which is again divided into two equal halves, and the upper part will have a tubercles for the nucleus because of the nuclei. So this nucleus gracialis in the middle, and lateral to that is the cuneatus. Lateral to that is tuberculum cinereum, which is formed because of the spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve and tract. Then first section was the pyramidal decussation, in which we saw that the pyramidal tract is going to crossed in the lateral column of the spinal cord. So it goes to form the lateral corticospinal tract. Now we are coming just upward to that. So now here we are not able to see the decussation, but instead that in the most ventral part, we are able to see ipsilateral corticospinal tract forming the pyramid. So before decussation, these pyramids are seen. So this is ipsilateral fibers. Then whenever a section comes, you have to decide or divide it into white matter and gray matter. So first we will see the white matter. This dorsal column tracts, that is fasciculus cuneatus and gracialis. Here first order neuron will synapse into their respective nucleus. And from there the secondary order neuron will start and they will go around the central gray matter towards the pyramid, and they will cross to the opposite side and will form a new lemniscus called as a medial lemniscus. The fibers going from nucleus gracialis and cuneatus to the medial lemniscus will be called as an internal arcuate fibers. There are three types of arcuate fiber. One is internal arcuate, one is anterior external arcuate fibers, one is posterior external arcuate fibers. So you have to remember all three arcuate. Okay, so this is the most important part of this section. So that's why we call this transverse section as at the level of sensory decussation. Okay, so you have to remember this internal arcuate fibers. Now, the arrangement of these fibers, the gracialis fibers will be ventral and medial, while cuneatus fiber will be dorsal and lateral in position. Now, one more white matter is here. It is called as a medial longitudinal bundle. Now, this bundle is connecting the number of cranial nerve nuclei. So, 3rd, 4th, 6th, which are supplying the extra ocular muscle. 8th nerve, so that is connecting with the hearing nerve, and next is the spinal nucleus of accessory nerve. So, it is connecting the 11th cranial nerve, which is supplying the trapezius and sternocleidomastoid. So, what is the function of this bundle? Whenever there is a sudden sound on your lateral or posterior side, which is heard by the 8th nerve, so your involuntarily 3rd, 4th, and 6th nerve will stimulate, and it will cause moving of the eyes towards that side, and along with the neck. So accessory nerve will supply sternocleidomastoid and trapezius, which helps to move your neck to the sudden sound. So that is the function of medial longitudinal bundle. Now one more nucleus is present called as accessory cuneate nucleus. So this accessory cuneate nucleus, it contains the fiber unconscious proprioceptive fibers, which are just coming from the upper limb. So it will form a separate tract for the upper limb. Now from here again the secondary order neuron will start, and they will be called as a cuneo-cerebellar fibers. As the name suggests, they will go to the cerebellum. It is going from medulla, so they will has to go through inferior cerebellar peduncle. So these fiber are also called as a posterior external arcuate fiber. Now there are a number of nuclei in the central gray matter. First nucleus we see in the hypoglossal nucleus. Posterolateral to that is the vagal nucleus. Posterolateral to that is the nucleus tractus solitarius. So tractus solitarius is a test center which receives signal from not only chorda tympani but also from 9th and 10th cranial nerve. You have to remember that. Then vagal nucleus is also actually connecting number of nuclei. It has preganglionic parasympathetic fibers, and it supplies the viscera of chest and the abdomen. Hypoglossal nucleus, the nerve emerges from the ventrolateral sulcus. Okay. Inferior olivary nucleus is also a collection of 3 nuclei, that is one large inferior olivary nucleus, one small medial, and one lateral. You have to understand, olivary nucleus is like a junction, so it receives the signals or information from lower part of the central nervous system, that is spinal cord, and higher center as well, that is cerebral cortex and thalamus. It receives information from all ways, and it sends this information to cerebellum through olivocerebellar tract. opposite side. So here olivocerebellar tract, it gives one-to-one relation with the Purkinje cells of cerebellum. Now these fibers which are going to Purkinje cell, they are called as climbing fibers. You will understand more in the cerebellum. So now the next section. Here you are able to see this is a flora fourth ventricle. Okay. So here is the actually fourth ventricle. So this is the floor. In the floor, what gray matter we are able to see is the medial to lateral is hypoglossal nucleus, then dorsal nucleus of vagus, then nucleus tractus solitarius and vestibular nucleus. Then we are able to see this white matter. This is medial longitudinal bundle. Below that there is a tectospinal tract. Below that is medial lemniscus, and below that is pyramid. Ventral to that is arcuate nucleus. Okay. Then at the we have already seen this. So white matter, we have seen that there is inferior cerebellum peduncle, most posterior lateral part. There is olivocerebellar fibers, and we have seen the cranial nerve nuclei, that is hypoglossal, vagal, and accessory. So all these three nerves also comes through the posterolateral and petrolateral sulci. Then there is a medial longitudinal fasciculus, which is related to the eighth nerve, so vestibular tract. Arcuate nuclei, which are ventral to the pyramid, which is actually displaced pontine nuclei. And from here, again the white fibers come out and they will form anterior external arcuate fibers. They goes to the opposite inferior cerebellar peduncle. So we have already seen all three arcuate fibers. Vestibular nuclei we'll see in pons in more detail. You have to remember nucleus ambiguous, which is a special visceral efferent which supplies the soft palate, pharynx and larynx. So it is mostly related with cough reflex and sneeze reflex. So I actually gave you a homework in the facial nerve nucleus lecture. I asked you what is Bell's phenomena. Has anyone read it?
Yes, ma'am.
What is Bell's phenomena?
It is a normal defense reflex which is present in 75% of population. In this reflex, the eyes are seen to roll up and out when the eyelids are forcibly closed.
Yes.
Or when the patient
is trying to close them. It is also called as a palpebral oculogyric reflex. It is normally present, so it is not an abnormal thing. But yes, it might not be present in all the persons. Okay. So let's practice some MCQ. Very easy one. So nucleus ambiguous is involved in taste, speech, gag reflex, or ring reflex.
Gag reflex.
No, gag reflex is related to nucleus tractus solitarius. You have understood that nucleus ambiguous is supplying the muscles of palate, pharynx, and larynx. So larynx is involved in speech. So that's why nucleus ambiguous is also involved in speech. Okay. So that was just, if you correlate the information from the previous lecture, then you'll be able to understand. That's why I actually added this MCQ. Others are easy. Accessory cuneate nucleus, which gives which types of fiber?
Anterior external arcuate.
Yes, and posterior external are given by
Yeah.
arcuate nuclei. And internal arcuate fibers, they are given by
Fasciculus.
yes, fasciculus cuneatus and gracialis. At the floor of fourth ventricle, following nuclei are present except
Facial nucleus.
yes. So